Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So whether you have a manuscript all ready to go, a book still stuck in your head, or even 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved into a drawer. And yes, probably once a month, I get an envelope full of loose leaf delivered to me. Visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by three authors who have completely unleashed themselves. Jane Taylor is the author of The Dragon Tempest, Season of the Dragon, Book 1. Next, we're going to have James Battestelli, the author of A Resolution to Die For, Book 2 of his Resolution series. And finally, Stephen Christiansen is the author of Istobarra, Commencement, and it is also Book 1 in a series. So we've got some prolific writers here. But first, Jane Taylor, the author of The Dragon Tempest. And she writes, everyone thought that monsters were a thing of pure fantasy. We were so very, very wrong. The end of life as we knew it didn't come with a nuclear blast of light. It didn't come with the deadly impact of a hurtling asteroid. No, it came in a wave of illness that swept the world with fear. With all the humans in quarantine, quiet settled over the planet for months. The beasts, hidden away for a millennia, ventured out of their buried caverns to investigate the sudden stillness. Leviathans, serpent kings, and dragons came forth from the bowels of the earth, and they saw no reason to go back to their sleep after the humans tried to reemerge. The season of the dragon began with fire and fury and would end with a new world order, one in which these giant terrorists held all the power. Every military institution across the globe was rendered to dust by these intelligent creatures. And then came their demands, humanity's complete surrender and servitude. Well, being a slave is not in my DNA, and yet I have been called upon to negotiate a peace treaty with these monsters. The only problem is every fiber of my being opposes their terms. If I blow this mission, the human race won't be given another chance. Please welcome author Jane Taylor. Thanks so much for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. And that was awesome to hear it read by somebody else.
First day, fabulous job on that book synopsis, but I'm a little terrified being that we're sitting here in quarantine.
We're still in quarantine.
I'm guessing this was a quarantine-inspired novel?
Yes, it was. It started, well, there's a dual purpose or dual thing that happened with this. I got the book covers secondhand. The first time they went up for sale, I wasn't fast enough to say I want. And then the cover artist knew that. And she said, the author that bought them wants to resell them. Do you want them? And I'm like, yes. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my God. And boom, the story just bloomed.
Oh my gosh. And yes, now I'm a little afraid to open my door.
I know. Especially since it takes place in New York City.
Oh gosh.
Watch out, he's coming from the water.
First author. Now we have had hundreds of authors on this show, and you are absolutely the first who the book cover came before the book.
A lot of mine do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, this one came first. This is the one that just came out in December. I saw it. I'm like, oh, I can write that for my daughter. My daughter's 26 and won't read my stuff. But that one, I was like, oh, I'll do that. She's awesome.
I love that. And that's a great writing prompt for people. People who are saying, gosh, I'd love to get started. I really don't know how to get started. There are some fabulous websites that talented cover artists are putting up covers like you were describing, and they're putting up these book covers that you can purchase, and maybe you'll purchase one and then, like Jane, write the book.
Yes. I mean, I for the last few years, the cover has come first because I had the ideas, like my fractured fairy tales, and I went to my cover artist and said, I want to write this, 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 and this. And she did it all for me, and now I'm just catching up to it. So the stunning cover first, the story comes later.
Now, you know already that this is book one in your series. Do you know
Yes.
the rest written, or do we know how many there are going to be?
There are three, and
Ah,
there's a omnibus of all three that's out now, and the ebook will be out on the 21st of all three.
fantastic. Fantastic. So 3 books to find out whether or not we make it through this pandemic.
Yes, yes, we make it for, from the monsters, not the pandemic. The
Worried
pandemic.
about COVID. You're worried about COVID. You should be reading Jane Taylor's books because you're not worried about COVID anymore. You'll be worried about the monster.
Exactly. Start making noise, people. I don't want them to wake up.
I think that that is a fabulous way to distract us from what's going on right now. I mean, like you mentioned, I'm in New York City. We're at like, if you live in New York City right now, you have a 1 in 4 chance of having COVID right now.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
I got that mother last year around this time before all the vaccines were available. So yeah.
So yeah, no, although I have to admit, even though everybody has COVID, they're still out making a whole lot of noise in New York.
Yes, exactly.
No one really believes in like laying low long enough for those monsters to come out.
I know, thankfully.
At the beginning, I could certainly see your inspiration because now I live here in the city, and first couple of months, I mean, there was no one.
Nobody out. Yep.
I mean, you could take a nap.
Everybody was getting their groceries delivered to their door, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I see it. I see it. I was in Times Square one day, like for a photo shoot because there was nobody there.
Yep.
Yeah, so I totally see where these monsters can be coming from.
Yes. So, New York City plays a big role in it. The subway systems play a big role in the book as well. So
Love
I had fun with it.
Right, other things too. So this is, I'll call it apocalyptic fantasy because that's,
Yes. Yeah, it's truly urban fantasy in an apocalyptic world because my female is a strong character, and I guess in most of my books the females are a strong character, But yes, I write urban fantasy, paranormal romance. I've written mysteries and thrillers and horror. So
yes, I can't ask you if you have a favorite because that would give it away.
I don't. For reading, it's a cross between urban fantasy with romance in it and paranormal romance because I love a good romance.
I agree. But for writing, you're all over the board.
Yes, supernatural suspense is a line that is in everything. So there's a supernatural component to most of my books. So magic, shifters, vampires, witches, going back.
Love it.
Clairvoyance. Yep.
Bring us back to starting writing. Were you like an overactive imagination when you were 5 years old?
Yes, I was. And I don't have it here, but I actually have the first book that I wrote for my parents that my parents gave me recently, this little tattered thing that I drew pictures in and stuff. And of course, everybody died in it, which I was like 12.
Okay, you were 5 years old and you wrote a book that everybody died?
I was 12, so a little older, but yes.
Oh, you're 12. It's
Like, did
fine.
they buy you a typewriter or did they bring you to a psychiatrist?
Neither. They just was like, the pictures are pretty. Okay, honey. But yeah, I wrote poetry through high school and took writing classes in college and then put it aside until I was 42.
Now, what happened
And
at 42 that made you write?
I had my day job, I'm a business analyst, and I was writing business specs. So I was writing. It wasn't fun writing, but it was writing. And then I became a supervisor and I wasn't writing anymore. And something was missing. And I was going kind of nutty and I was bitching about my day job. And my daughter, who at the time was 12, in the back of the car goes, "What would you do if you could do anything?" And I said, "Well, I'd write a book and get it published."
There you
and
go.
and my husband, and she's like, "Why don't you?" And I looked at my husband because he knew how I was when we were first married and tried to do it, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." I'm like, "Okay." And every now and then I think he regrets that because the computer is a modern staple in my house, in my lap. So
Now, your daughter doesn't read your books?
she's read two. One of them she begged me to write. It was about my high school years, and that's the only one that doesn't have the supernatural component. Um, and then she read this one because I made her, and she helped me edit it with
Okay.
her things. Yeah, I had confetti in it, and she said you can't have confetti for Christmas. You have to have a glitter. So I changed it to glitter.
That was her.
But yep. And you know, when she was 12, when I first started writing, she read something that my books back then were not for 12-year-olds. And she read something that scarred her. So she refuses to pick up anything, even with my mother-in-law telling her that this new series she would love it. She just was like, I just can't get that image of my mother out of my head. So then I wrote the urban fantasy Christmas novel for her.
Well, I love this. So your mother-in-law reads your books.
Yes, I live in we bought my in-laws house up here to help them out. So she lives here and she's been reading most of my recent stuff. I won't have her read the older stuff. My parents have read everything with the exception of that first book. My mother hasn't read it. My father told her not to. My father's read it. And I think that's the only one my husband hasn't read either. So
Wow.
yep.
90% of the time, my guest here, if I ask if their husband read their books, they're like, yep, nope.
Now he sneaks reading them because he doesn't want me to ask him, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? So he finishes it and he's like, that was good. I'm like, you read it? And he said, yeah, I didn't want you over my shoulder. So
Have you written in what period of time?
this is number 61.
Oh,
And I started in 2007.
so very prolific.
I write about 4 novels and 3 or 4 short stories every year. So I
Oh,
try to.
but what's your secret? How do you do it? Do you stay up late? Do you wake up early? Do you drink a lot? I mean, what is it?
Well, I finish the day job, I eat, and then I sit with the computer on my lap and write during the evening while everybody's watching TV. Or, I mean, when the kids were growing up, they were always around. So I'd bring the computer to their games, to their, Jaquito and dance and all of that stuff. So I just sneak it in when I can. And now it's usually from like 6 or 7 at night until 11 when I go to bed. That's my writing, marketing, and everything. So
6 or 7 at night until you go to bed. I'm wondering how you eat. I guess laundry out, which is great.
Well, that was the benefit. My husband picked up a lot of the household chores early on. Now I'm sort of sharing them, but he was really good about that for many years. You know, I drag the kids to their things and get my writing done at that point. But yeah, and then weekends depends on if we have things going on or not, and if we don't, I'm writing.
What an inspiration you are. You know, all those people who sit around and say, I'm too busy. Okay, do you hear how is? I'm not listening to this. There's a job, there's a family, there's children, there's occasional laundry, and 61 books.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
write fast, I read fast. I don't know. My typing count is fast.
have time to actually read also besides write.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's important. That's very important to read, especially in the genre you want to write in. So,
Thank you for saying that. I am so glad you said that. All those same people who say, I'm too busy to write, well, they also say, I'm too busy to read. You're just
then
like,
they shouldn't. Yeah.
you know they do. When I've said to people, oh, if you want to know, what to write and you want to understand your genre and what tropes work, and you have to read more. Well, I don't have time to read. Well, even Stephen King says, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. That's important.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So good for you. Obviously, there's no time for TV, so I won't ask you like what you think of the new Sex in the City or anything. You have no idea.
I have no idea. If you asked me about Supernatural, I could tell you almost every episode. Because that was my guilty pleasure for 15 years.
Some TV is happening.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's on. It's not like I'm, and I inserted myself writing in the middle of the family room, so I wasn't isolated.
Dazzled. I am dazzled that you get all this stuff done. Other people, if they get, goodness, Margaret Mitchell took 10 years to write Gone with the Wind, 61 books in 14 years.
Yeah.
You're like a rock star up there. I could tease and say you're in New Hampshire. What else is there to do? But I won't say that.
I was in Connecticut, same thing.
I only say that as a New Yorker. We all think once you leave the city limits, what is there to do? Well, congratulations on terrifying me more than, now I'm not even worried about the virus.
Thank you, Stephanie. Worry about the monsters.
Worse than worrying about the virus. So thank you for that. And certainly for anyone who is, going to want to be distracted from the virus or to read the other 60 books, you'll definitely want to visit jetaylor.com and check her out. Absolutely. Our next author is from Philadelphia. So somebody else who, like me, thinks that, in the sticks, there's nothing else to do but to write. James Battestelli is the author of A Resolution to Die For, book 2 of his Resolution series. And this is what happened some 19 years after Dylan had a mental breakdown in the fall of 2001 as a freshman at Temple University in James's first book, Shook. So now you can find out if he settles into his life or if he is still struggling to find his true self in the great big world. What happened after the grim resolution that he made on New Year's Eve? Well, it's a little terrifying that we're having this interview 2 days after we all made a whole lot of grim resolutions on New Year's Eve. So please welcome author James Battestelli. So nice to have you.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
So, grim resolutions. I should ask you first. Did you make any resolutions this year?
That's kind of what the book is about. That was kind of what the inspiration was, is that I don't really make resolutions. And that's kind of the whole backstory of the book. That the character Dylan doesn't believe in making resolutions. And, one conversation that he was having 19 years ago that he's haunted by to this day with the love of his life got away. He didn't realize it was the love of his life at the time, but it's what happens. And that period in his life is haunting him now, and it's based on New Year's Eve night where he's looking back and, he's an alcoholic and he's suicidal, he's depressed, and he's missing his family because he's estranged from his family. And he had a very strong family life growing up. And it's just, things are just different for him now. And it's kind of just, it all goes back to why he didn't make resolutions, and why people who do make resolutions, why they do, because they want something to aspire to. And it's kind of just a message, that there's some people who just don't want to chase to better themselves.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole thing. But
that. Now, I always wonder with things like this, how much of Dylan is James Battestelli?
I would say, well, I mean, I wrote a screenplay when I was a sophomore at Temple about myself. I kind of projected myself into this character of Dylan. And what I wanted to do at the time was I wanted to just leave town and go to LA, because that's where I wanted to live. That's where I wanted to be. That's where everything is happening. And that's what Dylan does in book 1, which, is based on the screenplay that I wrote 20 years ago. And so, I mean, it is me, but it's not me. Like, it's like fantasy me. It's like me, what I wanted me to be. It's what I wanted my existence to actually be, which is kind of sad when you read the books, because, and that you're like, wait, so that's what he wanted his life to be. That's really sad, because like what happens to the Dylan character is like not a joyous, happy kind of progression of events. It's fine. It's very real. It's a very realistic book. Or series, and it deals with a lot of things that need to be dealt with openly, like identity issues, self-doubt, self-awareness, religion, and what your thoughts on God are, and a lot of social things, mental health, a lot of undiagnosed mental health disorders. That's kind of what, is a very underlying part of this series. Like someone who read the book, who read book 1, told me, is Dylan schizophrenic? And I was like, that is for me to know and for you to find out. But that was a joke. I responded in joke form because I didn't know how to respond to it otherwise. I'm not going to say he is or he is not, but it's just, he's not right.
Right. No, I get that. Now, how many books are going to be in this series? And
just two, because the new book, the Resolution to Die For, it has a finite ending that it's a shocker. Like, it doesn't seem like a shocker when you read Resolution to Die For, and I'm telling you, yeah, there's not another book. You're like, wait, I get it, but no, it's not what you think. It's a whole thing. It's very twisty.
Well, I always contend, and this, that on this show, we never discuss anything that happens in a book past page 30, because I don't want to give away spoilers. Yeah. So I hold to that. We are not discussing the ending of it, but I did want so one of the things that I generally think when people are writing a character that's very much like themselves is that you get to rewrite your truth and your ending. But it sounds as if in writing this, you actually kind of set up this I'll call it alter ego, that you found out what would have happened if you would have gone down that path, and it's not necessarily all good. Is that true?
Exactly. And it's I mean, I'm gonna say this, I have 2 children. They're, no offense, but they're not likely to watch this webisode. But so I can just say this openly, although one of them is here. Cover your ears. She knows. In fact, this is not a children's book at all. series, but she would make me read book 1 to her at bedtime.
Mm.
I was like, I can't do that. Like, there's so many things in this book and so many words that start with F that you are not, you know. And
It's
so
like my daughter seeing my book.
like,
Yes.
I would read but I would read edited versions, which, you know, when you read this book, you're like, how did he edit that? Trust me, it can happen.
I was a film editor for a little while, so I know how
Yeah.
things can be edited.
it was shocking. But yeah, but I'm gonna say this. Writing this series saved my life. Legitimately saved my life, because I know that a lot of people and a lot of young people. I still count myself as young person. I'm 38, you know, so I'm still young. So go to hell. You're looking at me. No, I'm young. I'm young.
You are.
So, you know, I still, and what I'll say is that a lot of young people, you know, get viewed as dramatic or like over, I don't want to say sensitive, but you know what I mean? Like they're overly, you know, willing to just put out their business out into the world and be like, you know, woe with me. You know, that's not what I'm about. But I was going to kill myself. Like, I was definitely on my way to killing myself. Like, I lost my parents. You know, I went through a second divorce. You know, estranged from my brothers, you know, more than I was before. You know, that's what happens in life. You get older, families and everything. But, you know, and then the world shut down. And I'm just sitting on my ass, ordering DoorDash, watching terrible TV, watching sad movies, and it just all kind of added up. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. And then I started writing this idea, and I didn't feel that bad anymore. You know,
That's
like,
good.
because I was able to see, you know, a lot of the dark side, and like, you know, kind of do a compare and contrast thing. And I'm like, you know what? Not that bad.
Yeah.
Writing is very cathartic. It
Yeah.
gets everything out of you. Yeah.
You know, and like when the idea to write book 1, which was it wasn't supposed to be originally, it wasn't supposed to be split into 2 books. It wasn't supposed to be a series. I started writing book 1, which was supposed to be the book. It was just one book. It was just the book. I was writing a book. It was the screenplay. My father, when he was alive, would push me all the time to do something, to go to Hollywood, go to New York, get it in someone's hands, get that movie made, because it was such a good idea, like the concept for, you know, book 1, and, you know, relatability and everything. Then I didn't do anything, because I never did anything when I was young, because, you know, that's what happens. You know, you're super talented, you're like, yeah, I don't have to do this today, I can do this 3 years from now, and then you never do it. And then he died, and I felt really bad because I lost the screenplay years ago. And so I couldn't go to Hollywood and be like Michael Mann. He wouldn't make the movie, but, you know, I just picked the famous, you know, producer. But you know, I wouldn't be able to pitch anything to them because I wouldn't have anything in my hand. So then I re-enrolled at Temple, you know, 17 years after the fact, from when I stopped going the first time. And I took a creative writing fiction class to learn how to actually adapt the idea that I had in my head from what I remembered from the screenplay into a full-length novel. And my professor, she was excellent. She was fantastic. And then the world shut down. And so suddenly she wasn't there, but I was able to communicate through email, which wasn't what I had hoped. But, you know, still I did it. And like, I was just sitting around on my own with a MacBook Pro, just writing. And when I hit a wall, she said, you just have to keep writing, because you don't know where this idea is going to go. This is your first attempt at this. Just keep writing. Keep writing, write, and then go back and cut it apart and, you know, edit it and whatever. You know, just keep writing. And so I did. And, 300 pages turned into, when I was finished what I thought was a good finalized idea, it was 875 pages.
Wow.
I was like, I am not Jesus. My first publication cannot be 875 pages. Then I was like, you know what? And then I talked to a girl that I was sort of dating at the time, sort of in love with, but she wasn't in love with me. And it was a sad thing, but it was helpful. That situation was good in the end because she was a good editor for me. And she said, why don't you just cut it into 2 books? Because it's already kind of 2 books anyway. It's 20 years ago and then 20 years later. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'll do. And that's what happened. And now I have resolution.
Awesome. Awesome. And I love that it helped you personally. I always say that, one of the things I want the publisher is to change lives 1 book at a time. But the first life that gets changed is the author's. And I hear that in your story, that the book changed you. And for other people to read it, because that's a book that's going to touch people. That's definitely going to touch people. And that is just terrific. And thank you so much. And let's get some people who are going to be touched. So if that's what you're looking for, A Resolution to Die For, book 2 of Resolution. The first book is Shook by James Battestelli. Our third author today, Stephen Christiansen, is the author of Istobarra, Commencement, and it's from his Orbbelgguren book series. And he wrote that Medri, a female dark elf necromancer, finds herself ensnared in a web of intrigue and conspiracies. In her journey through the underworld, she uncovers more and more of a grand plot while discovering more about herself and where she fits in with her new life. Yasei Doltar retains the blasphemous secret of his house. His only hope in keeping his house and his life alive is in the trust of a battle captive. Valis Velkin, the leader of the House of Acquisitions from the city of Mosselbauen, has found that one of his most trusted contacts has been assassinated. His investigation leads to a discovery of grand proportions, the likes of which can only lead to war. Enter a world of plots, lies, deception, and murder. Please welcome author Stephen Christiansen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, thrilled to have you. And Stephen is hailing from Oregon today. We can all be jealous. Well, I'm 30 degrees today. How about you?
Oh, about 35, I think.
Oh, okay. So I'm not too jealous. Nobody's.
No.
James is going to win the Southernmost Award, but I don't think he. So Stephen, tell us a little bit about this book and how you got your inspiration. That's quite a tale.
Well, I got my inspiration from the Salvatore books. He wrote a lot of Drizzt Do'Urden. I loved the War of the Spider Queen series that he was involved in. And I thought, well, if he could write a 6-book series, then maybe so can I. Well, my 6th book turned into 10, 15, then 17, and 3 offshoots. So it's 20 books.
The series has 20 books. This is book 1 of a 20-book series?
Yes, and more is coming out.
Wow.
Now, the main series is only 17 books, and that is finished. But the offshoots are still coming.
Wow, that's a lot of inspiration going on there. That's amazing. Now, you were not a pandemic-inspired book. Did you see a spider in the corner and that did it? What started this?
Well, I actually have loved spiders my entire life. And I love mushrooms and I love dark caves. And when Dark Elves came out and had all these things, I went, oh, wow, I love Dark Elves. So I started reading as many Dark Elves as possible. And suddenly my love for Dark Elves just came up. Medri, or Istobarra, who's the same character, was actually a throwaway character, and I didn't even know she was going to be a main character. So the books really are a surprise to me on how they transformed and how they came about. So when people say, well, how did this get started? I don't know. It just
You
happened.
just sat down and wrote.
Well, I was going to ask you how you manage, keeping track of things, or you just don't, and you just let them evolve as they want to.
Well, kind of both. I do have another companion book that has all the characters listed and some subplots going.
Okay.
But I only plot out about half a book. I let my imagination just run with the other half and let it go from there. And then I take those subplots and expand on them, and then expand on something else. And then I realized, wow, I had this entire series going all along. So
I mean, just to realize that, but you said, you have characters that you didn't realize they were going to be as big as they were, or perhaps you have characters that you didn't realize they were going to.
there's another female character, a succubus, who is in the story, and she was also a throwaway character. She's ended up being a fan favorite, and she's survived the entire series. So
That's
sometimes
always good.
characters just surprise me.
Jane, I'm guessing you've had similar surprises in your books, or
Oh yeah, I mean, it's fun when the characters take on a life of their own and do things that you don't realize they're gonna do. It just comes out and you read again and go, oh, really? I've had that happen many times. I'm not a plotter at all. So, plotting sort of takes the life out of the book for me, out of writing. So I just have an idea and run with it. And it sounds like, Stephen, you did that and you ran with it grand in a grand way.
And sometimes my plots have to be trimmed back and make room for the growth of the book that's
Yeah.
going in its own direction. So even though I plot out half the story, some of that plot has just got to go out the window and let the characters do their own thing.
Right. Makes sense.
With 10 books, though, when you're up to book 9, do you have to do you have notes to remind yourself, who are these people and what? How does that work?
I had all my books sitting on my desk, and I was constantly picking up, flipping through to another page. What did I write about? Oh yeah, that's right. And then, oh wait, what was the name of that person? Oh, okay. Oh wait, they died. No, I wait, who is that again?
What color eyes do they have? Yeah.
I would certainly think over the course of 10 books, I mean, goodness, if I watch the number 3 of a movie sequel, I already forgot, is he still alive? Or something like that. Now, do you get influenced in your pantsiness with your writing by your readers? Have your readers ever piped in and said, I want more of this or less of that? And has that been an influence? Or you just, nope, seeing where this flows?
Oh, I'm just seeing where it goes. People have piped in about how they love a character or love the plot line, but haven't really voiced a concern about where they want it to go. The series itself is basically over, but I am starting a new series. I think I'm starting to plot with these characters again. So we might be seeing another series coming out.
Okay, and same characters. You like these characters. You're not done with them yet.
Oh, I'm not done with them yet. There's room to grow. Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. Now tell me about what you like to read. Do you like to read the same genre you write in or something different?
Oh, I read all over the place. Sci-fi, thriller, mystery. My favorite author is Poe. I love to read King. If something sounds good, I'll pick it up and read it.
Ah, love that.
Yeah.
The Stand was my favorite book until this past year. I have a new favorite now, but that was my favorite for years. So yes.
And Stephen, would you ever write something completely different? Completely different?
Well, I have written sci-fi. I have written thriller, modern day thriller. I'm writing a like an X-Files FBI thing currently. I'm halfway done with it. And they all tie in.
Mm.
So you'll find the FBI suggest a call to an organization that you'll see in the sci-fi book who talks about something in the fantasy books. And then there's another thriller book, modern day, Stephen King-ish, that's out. So they all kind of tie in together.
Okay, so how many books total have you written so far?
26, not as much as 60. I'm on 27. I've got about 10 more books running around in my head. And I can't wait to get them out.
Wow, fantastic. Well, my God, that means that, on this show here, we're nearing 100 books written.
Oh,
So
yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
some tips for our writers out there in getting started. If I were going to ask Jane, besides finding a book cover you love, because I think that's a great way to get started, but any thoughts that you'd like to share with some writers to get started?
I always say 3 things. 1, live. Get off your phone, get off your computer, go out and do something. You're going to write about things that are in your life. Like James there, he wrote about his life. If you don't go out and live, you don't have anything to write about. Fall in love, get your heart broken, go swimming, whatever, go climbing. The second, read everything. Read good books, read bad books, know why it's a bad book. Find out what you like. Find out how other authors do it. And then finally, like everybody else here, is just write.
Button chair, right.
Yeah,
and finish the book.
Oh
It
yeah,
doesn't have to be clean that first time. Just get the story out.
that's right.
That's my normal advice is sit, get the story out. You can go back and fine tune it, layer it, and edit it after. But if you don't ever get the story out, you're never going to have a book.
I've met so many people that say that they are writing a book, and I ask them, how far have you gotten? No, I haven't written anything yet. Well, I guess you're not really writing a book then.
Now, writing a book.
I do what they mean when they say I'm writing a book then.
I know. Yeah, I've had somebody approach me that I'm looking very much forward to help write a book. My nephew, who is a forced retired police officer because he got shot in the line of duty and he wants to write about that. And he approached me. He said, "How do I write and get published?" I'm like, "Okay, slow down. Have you written?" He's like, "No, not yet." I said, "Well, when you write a chapter, send it to me and I'll edit it and send back notes and we'll go back and forth and I'll help you get there." Because his story is very, very inspiring. So
Baby steps.
yes, I'm like, you got to put it down on paper.
Yes.
If it doesn't, just put it down on paper. If even if you think it's crap, send it to me and I'll help you.
Oh.
So
James, how about you? Any tips for our writers or future writers out there?
Really, like they had said, just write, just get the story out. I think that was what. Now is it J.E.
Jane.
Jane, just call you Jane.
Yes, just Jane. Yeah.
Jane. What's the E stand for?
Elizabeth.
So I might call you Lizzie because I want to be different.
Okay.
So what my friend Lizzie was saying was, you just make sure you get the story out. Just finish what you're writing. Just get it out and you can clean it up later. And like Stephen said, get off your phone. I know it's kind of contradictory for us to be saying this. We're all on a computer right now. Get off. Just close. Just shut the screen and just go outside. Like I went to LA actually in July, with my first book, because I hadn't finished the second one yet, and I went out to LA to try to promote my book, as though that was going to go anywhere, because like half of LA was still shut down. I didn't realize. I could have picked up my phone and called. I could have researched it and found out. But like literary agents are working from home. So I would go to literary agent's office, just knock on the door, and like nobody's gonna come and answer. And I'm there banging my hand for 20 minutes. And you try, but at least in the experience, I got to fly out there. I got to be on my own. I had to face that fear, even though no one responded, the fear of rejection was there because I thought they were going to come down and they were going to say, yeah, this sucks, go away, but and then I did other stuff. And like, I went to a gentleman's club one of the nights I was there, and a thing happened that inspired me to write a story based on what happened. But I started writing it when I was on the plane on the way back. And then when I got home, I read it and I was like,
Well, you finished it.
yeah. I mean, I don't think there was enough to like expand upon. So, but like, and you know what? In 20 years, that'll be my hit.
But you know something? You just have a story of travel, courage, fear, and a bunch of other things that you just told us, where your story of picking up the phone and calling, that's not a cool story.
No, it's not. Exactly.
So,
and like, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep, owning the window here, but in my first appearance on this show, I had talked about my accident. I was in a car accident when I was 21. I have a traumatic brain injury. I was in a coma for 3 weeks and I had to learn everything again. My left side was shut down. It was the whole 9 yards. So a lot of my, inspiration for this series, and a lot of the depression and stuff came directly from that. And, my first book actually was a memoir that I wrote in 2017 while it was right before my father passed away. I was lucky that I got it out and had him, he actually edited it for me. It was great. But that story is about my accident and about the recovery from the brain injury. And it's just an honest retelling of what I was going through. And like, that is a really, really interesting read. And that inspired me to keep writing. And that was what led to me feeling bad for not getting the screenplay actually done anywhere because my father passed away. But there's always an inspiration to write. You just have to seek it out, and you just have to open your eyes and just pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
A lot of things in my book, you'll find that some of my own experiences are put in. People who are on a boat and what happens to them, or people who are traveling and what happens to them. So yeah, inspiration is everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And so for people, who are thinking about writing a book, stop thinking about it. Just
do it.
Just do it.
The Nike logo, just do it. It's absolutely true.
That's going to be Red Penguin Books. That's going to be their new legal fight. It's getting that slogan away from Nike. Yeah, Red Penguin Books. Just do it.
Just do it.
What we want you to do right now, everyone, is to just start by reading Jane Taylor's book, The Dragon Tempest. I had a little misprint before. It's jetaylor75.com. You can find, 61 books there. So,
plus omnibus books. So there's a lot more than 61.
Want to check out The Dragon Tempest. It's easier and cheaper than getting a COVID test, so
yes, it is.
And it'll distract you from what's going on. James Battestelli's book, A Resolution to Die For, book 2. So you'll want to grab book 1 so you know what you're finding out in book 2, and keep on going with that. And then finally, Stephen Christiansen, who has, dozens of other books to be checking out. So if you're into spiders and elves and all that other good stuff, grab a copy of this. There's a 10-book series. I love book series because you get started and you could just keep on going. Once you've learned all those characters' names, you're right there with it. I'm a huge, huge fan. And I can't thank you enough for joining us. What an inspiration. Gosh, everyone they already turned us off because they started writing already because
It's just
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
such a pleasure. And here's to many more publications in the new year. Please, when your new books are coming out, please come and join us between the covers. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit betweenthecoverstv.com. By the way, at betweenthecoverstv.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.